good day. I do have a bunch of springtime projects I was considering starting to do this weekend, but we're supposed to get to 39 tonight, and then we're supposed to have a couple nights in the 40s after this. So I'm just going to go ahead and do some maintenance pruning on a few of my microcarpa. I may do a few in the video. I may do just one or two, just kind of depending on how much time it all takes up. This was a cutting that I took from what I call the tall green island. I put it in that playlist. I'll show you first where I took the cutting in March of 2020. And then go ahead and give you a look at what it looked like about a year after that. That was February of 2021. And then again, just show you both those looks from this angle too. It was right after that second set of pictures. I made a video on this guy. I kind of made a mistake on it for the size of the cutting it was. It's probably just a bad idea. I tried to let some of the lower growth go, and I was trying to constantly cut back the top, trying to build some taper. I think because of the size of the cutting and just the way I took it, it was just a mistake, and it's caused just a bunch of crazy growth and some dieback. So about a year ago from now, actually about 10 months ago, I'll include that link in the description, I repotted it and just kind of changed the direction of what I was doing. I tried to let it go and neglect it for so long that it even had a little rogue branch growing from under that had actually broken off the main tree, and I was trying to let it get kind of swampy with some aerial roots and everything. And what had happened was it actually broke from the main tree and it just rooted itself right on in there. Kind of happy with that. I was able to get that to survive. I've got that going in its own little pot outside now. It looks pretty good. But today, all this growth right now, it looks like many branches, if you look at it, especially from a distance. But really, almost all these branches all come from like 3 or 4 spots. I'm going to get each one of those spots down to just one branch, and then probably leave it alone again until, mid-spring, mid-summer, just depending on how it reacts. Once I do get this down to just one branch coming off of each spot on the trunk, I am going to leave the growing tips on just to allow it to continue to build up energy there. If I cut the pruning, I feel like if I cut the tips off, I'd wind up with a bunch more back budding right at the same spots again. I'd rather just go ahead and let it go with some momentum into the spring here. So there's a little stub coming off here. It's probably maybe about the size of my pinky nail or something like that. It comes off the tree, maybe a little bit bigger. And then there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 branches coming off of just that. Way too many for that spot. If it was a little bit longer, maybe I could let some of them stay on there. That's not where I want the leader to come from, so I'm not going to want the one that's poking straight up. So I'm going to take that one out. Don't want any of this straight down growth. There's kind of a 6th branch too coming off the bottom. Now I notice now this one actually has 3 tertiary branches coming off of it, so I think that's the one I'm going to try to keep. This one's too close to the trunk. Kind of growing backwards off that stump there, which I don't really like all that much, but it does have 3, it said sub branches coming off of that, and maybe if I let that run, it'll stop looking so awkward the way it kind of comes backwards there. Take these knob cutters. Maybe that'll also give it some room to kind of just straighten out a bit. One thing that may open up this trunk a little bit, there's this, it's a bigger branch, but it's coming right out of kind of what you almost want to consider the belly of the thing for. I think I'll just go ahead and take that one all the way off. Not sure why I left it on there the last time. This branch is now the lowest branch. Just has a couple of little growths coming right out of the top of it there. And 2 branches coming off of that. There's one growth point here. This one is one of those straight ficus shoots that just kind of pops out, looking for sunlight. And then there's another one here that has like 3 coming off of it. And that's pretty much the same spot there. That's a 4th branch that was right on the same spot. And then there's a knot coming out of the top here. I say a knot just because, once again, it's got several growths coming out of one spot. This one's coming up and competing with the leader a bit, I think. So I'll take that one off. And there we go, simplified it quite a bit. Everything I left on, I left the growing tips. I know at one point when I repotted this, 10 months ago, I had thought that maybe I'd change the angle some after I got the trunk to thicken up a little. Now that may have actually worked now that I kind of look at it in hindsight. I was trying to, it was just perfectly straight, no taper at all. It is starting to appear a little bit fatter at the base of it. Of course, if I let this run, that's going to go ahead and heal that up. And now it is starting to kind of die back to that branch. I'm going to hit that with the knob cutters. Won't worry about the Dremel tool for now or anything. But I would like to get back to some live tissue. And we'll see what happens from there. Alright, and then I got this guy here. Pretty much going to do the same type of pruning to it. This was a root over rock project that I exposed. I exposed the rock in May. And I actually made this around the same time that I made the ones that I have that are a little more developed than this one. I mean, obviously, I just exposed this in May and haven't done anything with it since. But I put it in a terracotta pot, and what I did was I left it. It was probably one of the smallest cuttings that I used. One of the smaller rocks that I've used as well. But I left it in the pot for quite a bit longer than the other ones. And I just noticed that it was starting to get a bunch of escape roots, and it kept growing into the pallet that I sat on. So I decided to go ahead and expose it. Try to get some of these growths coming right out of the trunk. Growing kind of down into the rock. I would like to try to preserve some of these aerial roots. Some of these aerial roots are just starting to reach the substrate there. I usually don't get very many in the winter. Kind of surprising. I may cut that back just a little bit more for taper. I'm going to get a look at what it looks like once I open it up a little bit first. So there's no real big chop scar on this one. It's the longest shoot here, kind of leaving the profile of the plant a little bit. So I figured I'd leave all those growing tips on there and cut that back. If you go right back and watch the video of when I originally exposed this, and I'll put that link in the description, I had talked about this branch, or I'm fairly certain I talked about this branch coming straight off the top. I am not 100% certain what angle I'm going to wind up repotting this at in the future. And I've just been trying to decide, it's got, it's good healthy growth there. It would kind of, the way that this is pretty much where it was potted to, and then this is very slender, where this is quite a bit thicker, and it shouldn't, in terms of taper, it should gain taper as it goes in, but of course that's the root. So I kind of left that there, hoping that that would thicken that up a bit. I'm having a hard time deciding whether or not I should cut this branch, this top branch, or the whole thing, or leave them both. And I think for now I'm going to go ahead and just leave them both. With that off of there, would look a little more like a tree hanging off a rock. There it kind of gives it a little more of a shrub-like appearance. It's right on top of that root there, and I would like that root to start thickening up more, this one here and this one here. And with its position, it should help just kind of create some more taper within the tree itself. I may remove it one day. I feel like maybe if I wait too long, it's going to create a huge scar on the top there. But we'll just have to see. Oh. All right, and last, but certainly not least, I got this little guy here, smallest one of the ones I'm going to work on today. I repotted this in one of my first videos. I think I called it Microcarpa cuttings. It may have been included in the video that I made with that first tree I worked on today, but I think I did do them as two separate videos. I think I had this one in with a bunch of other little cuttings, and then that one, I'm really all that sure. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description. I wired it at the end of one of my other videos where I worked on some smaller trees. I don't really remember which one that was. You can see the wire on there. Not really all that sure how long it's been. I can tell it's cutting in a little bit. I'm going to take it off today. And I am going to prune it. I'm going to get it set up to repot it in the spring. I actually found this on the side of the road a few days ago. And I was thinking, it's the material of it. I was thinking I could make a root over SpongeBob house. And my plans is to, if it's got some stringy roots, if it doesn't have any stringy roots in there, I don't really know. I haven't looked at the root ball for a long time. If it does have some, I'm going to try to see if I can find at least one root for each one of these portholes. And then go ahead and just bury it up into in some substrate up to about like here. Try to get a tool. I could probably use my Dremel or something to cut. It's got a broken top of the pineapple anyway, but I'm going to cut the rest of that off so I can set it on there, have the roots going in there, root over SpongeBob house. I think it'd be pretty cool looking. Trying to get a look and a feel as for what that might look like. I can look at these pictures later to see if I think it would be appropriate. I'm afraid if I used any other type of a tree, like if I used tiger bark, I could get it to bite in there really quick. But they grow so quickly, I'm afraid it would overwhelm it too quickly. And almost any other tree I can think of that would be a good root over rock candidate, I think would grow too quickly. I think that these Microcarpa, if you do keep them pretty well contained, their roots will thicken, but they're not super aggressive. I'd like to be able to show it off for a little while. I don't want it breaking right away or anything. So we'll see how that goes in the spring. I'm going to take off a few of the unwanted branches. That way I can just get a little bit of a better look, and I won't have to worry about being so careful about breaking the branches I don't want anyway. I can just be careful about the ones that are left. I actually have, very lightly, but I have gone out several times and taken off a few of the branches that it gets, growing straight up, straight down, things like that. So there shouldn't really be that many That one could probably be a keeper. On the straight up side there. It's kind of straight up too. And I will be pruning this one pretty hard. Roofers are supposed to come next weekend or at the end of next weekend, so I got to get it ready for them next weekend. I'm not sure how many projects I can really work on then. Tried to leave that on as a bit of a sacrifice, but it just died back. But I'm under the impression this is going to be our last cold weekend right now. And if I cut everything back, I like to kind of go on the philosophy of repotting it right when it's exploding with growth. And so I figure probably 3 or 4 weeks from now, it should be exploding with growth. And whenever I notice that, I'll repot it. And if it doesn't work in this SpongeBob thing, I've got some other candidates for it. But I do want to use something small for that. If I use anything too big, instead it will envelop it really quickly. Let's see. Some wire marks on there, definitely more. I have more in the apex here, but I'll have more growth on the apex too to heal them up. All right, and I really do like this little tree. I like the size of it. I do think that big trees can be very impressive. They can be very impressive to look at. I mean, when I go to the bonsai nursery and they got the trees that are, you know, the size of a small car and everything, really is pretty awesome. These, you know, they don't hurt your back to pick up. Take very little substrate when you repot them. Easy to work on. Gonna look at that real quick. Yeah, we'll see how that turns out.